Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Hong Kong and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel once before. Now, the last review that I did from these guys came about 5 years ago. I picked up one of this brewery's beers the very first time that I visited Hong Kong, and my impression of it was that it was really quite interesting, and it seemed that this brewery were doing things with lots of different adjuncts, which made them quite quirky in comparison to the other Hong Kong breweries that were around at the time. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is a style that is quite an interesting one that you don't come across all that often. We haven't reviewed too many examples of these on the channel over the years, unfortunately, so that's something that I do need to fix. But it's a special occasion beer for the brewery, and it's also got a little bit of a kind of semi-local twist to it that I think could make it very interesting as well. So there are several points of interest when it comes to reviewing this beer. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see how this one turns out. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to stick to Kowloon, where I stay. We're going to go kind of round the bay a little bit to the Kwun Tong area, and that means that we're going to have a look at only my second beer on the channel from Moonzen Brewery. So this particular beer is called Ginseng Oolong Wheatwine. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and I think from the name you can tell what style this one is. So this is also the brewery's 10th anniversary beer, which makes it quite interesting, and I think this was released maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I have had this beer 2 or 3 months sitting in the fridge actually, but at 8.5% ABV, it is on the lower end of the alcohol spectrum for this particular style. And for those of you that aren't familiar with exactly what a wheat wine is, essentially it's the same idea as a barley wine, but it has 30 to 40% of the malt base being composed of wheat. The tea in this one, the Ginseng Oolong, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is actually a Taiwanese variety of tea that is supposed to be very, very nice. I don't drink tea, so I couldn't really tell you, but I thought this would be a really nice one to review since we haven't reviewed anything from Moonzen in quite some time, although we do have a lager beer from them in the fridge that we'll need to check out as well. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then. The Ginseng Oolong Wheatwine, 8.5% ABV, the 10th anniversary beer of Moonzen Brewery in Kwun Tong, Kowloon, here in Hong Kong. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Moonzen Brewery before, and we will add another 1 or 2 to those at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography tagging system. So go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Hong Kong playlist, of course, where we're adding many different things. But yeah, check out the playlist of beers from other countries and regions as well. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Moonzen Brewery for the first time in quite a wee while. So, Moonzen Brewery was founded by Laszlo Raphael and Michelle Wong in December of 2013, but they quite often list their foundation date as 2014. Because I think that's really when things kind of got going. But Laszlo apparently grew up in Mexico and developed an interest in Chinese language and culture as a teenager, and later he homebrewed for a number of years doing 5-gallon batches in his apartment, whereas Michelle spent her early years in Hong Kong and she studied theology and religion before working in academia. But when they started the company together, neither had any experience of the industry, and Laszlo had been an oil engineer working in Tunisia while Michelle had been working at a university in Hong Kong. So they started getting things together for the brewery in 2013, and their first premises was a very small industrial unit in the Kwun Tong area of Kowloon. But in this space they were producing just very small batches of only 100 litres, but then in 2016, after a few strong years of growth, they managed to move to a larger premises, and in this new premises they installed a new brewing system where they could brew 1,000 litre batches, and soon they were producing in the region of 20,000 litres of beer per month. I think that figure was from 2020. But that year as well, they opened their first bar called Mooncock in the Mongkok area of Kowloon. That is still open today. It serves quite an interesting array of food actually. But from what I've heard, the guys at Moonzen are not so involved in the management of this place anymore. I think they've taken a step back and they focus on the brewery. But the name that they chose for the brewery, Moonzen, comes from the Cantonese phrase Moonsan, which means door guardians, and these are often displayed at the entrances of Chinese buildings, you know, the sort of dragons and things like this. But they apparently got this name from the time they spent together in Beijing. So each of the 5 original core beers that they had, I'm not sure if they're still the same, these were named after a member of the Chinese pantheon. So we'll need to see about reviewing those over the next wee while. I'll need to speak to the guys at the brewery and see what ones are part of the original core. But as of May 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 195 different kinds of beer, and you can go along to the brewery usually on Fridays and I think Saturdays as well, and you can just go along and drink the beer. They kind of open it up and serve free beer, which is quite interesting. So yeah, we'll need to do an out and about video up there at some point and get the wee tour of the brewery and get Laszlo on camera a little bit and chat to him, because he's quite a nice guy actually. I spoke to him a little bit the last time I was there. But yeah, that's everything we can really say about Moonzen Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on and actually have a taste of this beer then. I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open up. There you can see, if we bring that forward, you can see the Moonzen symbol. That is also on the bottle cap, incidentally. But yeah, the artwork on this one is pretty nice. I do like that. I love the kind of the dragons and stuff that you get on these on the Moonzen things. I do like that, how they kind of bring out the old Chinese culture, because historically, you know, China is a very, very interesting country actually. But yeah, it says on the back here, celebrate Moonzen's 10th anniversary by delecting yourself in this amber nectar infused with Ginseng Oolong and a wheat forward sweetness for an unforgettable journey. So as we said, this one is 8.5% ABV, which is on the lower end of the scale, I would say, for a wheat wine. I don't know if I've ever had one that's been only 8.5%, come to think of it, but the 8.5% is kind of that percentage is kind of in line with the old English wheat wines. I think it's the Americans that have kind of pumped up the percentages of these beers over the years. But like I said, a wheat wine is basically a barley wine, but with about 30 to 40% of its malt base being composed of wheat. You get rye wines as well, actually. So yeah, this style, the wheat wine, was a style that I first encountered in Japan, which was kind of odd, actually. But yeah, this one, the Ginseng Oolong Wheatwine, 8.5% ABV. Let's get it out into the glass and we'll see what it's all about. Good little bit of smoke on the opening there, incidentally. So we'll get it out and see what we have here. Just check, is there any sediment here? We'll sugar the last little bit up, and then yeah, we'll pour the rest of it in there. Yeah, it's just a little bit of sediment lingering there on the bottom of the bottle there, but not too much. So anyway, before the head on this beer disappears, you can see that it's poured with just under a finger of a frothy, I would say, cream coloured head. If we bring it forward, you can see there's a nice little bit, there's kind of medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid there, but it gets a little bit foamier the further up the head that you go. But yeah, all in all, head looks pretty nice on this one, and that's going to sit there for quite a wee while. In terms of the colour of this beer, I would describe it as being a very rich kind of blood orange amber colour. It's about the same as you know, like a West Coast double IPA, something like that. Yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation, although if you shine the light through this one, you can see quite a steady stream just from the middle stem of the glass there, and the beer does have a little bit of natural haze to it as well. So remember, the colour of your beer will depend on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. But yeah, I think in this case, maybe the tea leaves would have a little bit of an effect on it. Not 100% sure. But yeah, I think this one, in terms of what I've seen from wheat wines before, this colour is certainly within the kind of realms of possibility. There's no real doubt in my mind about that. So yeah, I don't think we really need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. So I think we can have a little look at the aroma of this beer and see what it's all about. I think this is going to be quite interesting. Oh yeah. Straight away you get the tea out of this one. And I will say that it's not an overly pungent aroma that comes out of this beer. It's actually quite relaxed, this one. So yeah, the way everything pieces together in this beer is quite interesting. But like I say, very mild mannered in terms of the aroma that you're getting out of this one. And you can see the head has retained quite well on this actually. But yeah, you do get that kind of oolong tea kind of character coming out of this one. For me, it's quite an aromatic tea. As I say, I don't drink tea or coffee, but you know, for me, coffee beans, I love coffee beans as an adjunct in beers. Tea leaves, I'm a bit, I think it depends on the style very much. But yeah, for me, the aroma of this beer is pretty nice actually. It's got a good little bit of sweetness to it. You've got the kind of tea, I don't know, is it right to call tea savoury? I don't know. But you've got nice breadiness in there, a bit of sweetness, a little bit of hoppy character of course as well, because remember, barley wines and wheat wines and stuff are kind of like a big brother to IPAs and double IPAs at the end of the day. The styles are all related through their malt to hop ratios. But yeah, the aroma coming out of this one is really nice. So let's try and just break it down and describe that aroma for you a wee bit more in depth. So for me, the backbone of this beer is like a fresh, brown bready hedgehog bread crust. You absolutely get a little bit of that in there. There are little elements of like woodiness and crackery character in there. I think that's most definitely fair to say. So woody elements, crackery character, yeah, woody elements, crackery character, the bread crust in there. You've got some nice sort of sweet wholemeal brown bread coming out of this one, which I think is very nice. Quite sweet brown bread for sure. And then on top of that, you can smell like a fluffy white bready character. And with the white bread, I would say that it smells like the tea is kind of infused into that particular layer. I don't know why I get the impression of that from the aroma, but yeah, the sort of tea aromas that are coming out of this one just seem to be concentrated in that white bready part of the beer. So that's really interesting actually. You do get a little touch of wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose, which is interesting, and you can smell like a more dense white bready character out of this one, which of course will be the wheat part of this one. I'd love to see the brew sheet for this and see what they're actually doing with it. But one thing I would say about it is I think the fact that the aroma is a little bit more kind of laid back almost. I think that's maybe just because it's an 8.5% of this one, so it really is at the lighter end of the scale. This is kind of double IPA territory, to be honest with you, rather than being full, you know, barley wheat wine, whatever we're going to call it. But yeah, on the on top of the kind of wheaty character that you're getting out of this one, as I say, the wheat gives you a big smooth bready note and a wee bit of bitiness in the back of the nose. But you've got some lovely sweet, brown sugars in this one as well. Now, one of the things you can often do with barley wines to give them a wee bit more complexity is you can do a longer wort boil, which caramelizes the sugar more, and you get these lovely, like leathery, dry, sugary notes out of it. But with this one, it's got a little bit like a toasty caramel to it. Straight up sweet caramel as well, quite bright actually, but there's also a little bit of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of this beer. But as I say, underneath you've got a little bit of woodiness in there, you've got a little bit of cracker and stuff like that, and yeah, it's just really quite an interesting blend of things that's going on in this this particular beer. So yeah, I like the way that all of that just pieces together actually. So gets a thumbs up from me on the malty side of things. I think we're going to get quite a bit more flavour out of this when we actually taste it though. But on the hoppy side of things, there's not too much to report on the green component. I'd be curious to know what hops they've used in it actually. But it's you know, you get a little touch of like an almost noble earthiness coming out of this one. There's a little bit of herbal character, of course, as well, which is kind of promoted a wee bit by the presence of the tea. Slight floral aromaticity, but quite a bright, smooth floral aromaticity, I would say. And then you've also got that little bit of kind of bright grassiness coming out of this one too. The green component and the aroma here for me is really quite quite interesting. It's really quite smooth in a sense. So yeah, I do really like how this one pieces together. Yeah, the green component in this beer is quite interesting, I have to say that. Do wonder maybe some, I don't know, a little bit Hercules or a more German noble hop. Very curious. But yeah, on the fruity side of things then, let's try and sugar it up and see what fruits we can get. For me, the fruity character in this one really is, again, quite mild. It's like pear, sultana, you know, maybe a little bit of fresh green apple, something like that. So yeah, pear, sultana, fresh green apple. Yeah, I think that's quite interesting, to be honest. Yeah, pear, fresh green apple, a little bit of sultana. Yeah, the aroma that comes out of this, I think, is really interesting. So for me, yeah, for me, I think the aroma is very, very mild, but you know, as you sugar it more up and as your nose adjusts to it, you start to get a few more kind of subtleties out of it. So I really am very curious to see how this is going to, I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out when we actually have a taste of it. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I do think it's time that we have a taste of this one and just and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Ginseng Oolong Wheatwine at 8.5% ABV, the 10th anniversary beer of Moonzen Brewery, who are based in Kwun, Tong, Kowloon here in Hong Kong. This is going to be interesting. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah. It's quite a mild-mannered ale in a sense as well, actually. You can feel, it's one of these ones when the beer is actually on your tongue. There's a wee bit of stuff going on and it shows you a bit of smoothness and a bit of sweetness and things. But then it really shows you more subtleties and more kind of complexity into the aftertaste, I think. Yeah. Yeah, no, this one, it's one of these beers where it's very, very smooth, but it kind of rolls out across the palate, and as it dries out, you start to get more and more complex flavours coming out into the aftertaste. So, yeah, it's really nice, this one. I do think it's really nice how this all pieces together, actually. So, yeah, for me, the flavour profile of this one is quite interesting. I mean, after doing 4,000 odd beer reviews, you want beers that are going to test your palate a little bit. And this one certainly does that, actually. I do wonder if I was to taste this blind, I'm not sure that I would pick up that it's a wheat wine, to be quite honest with you. Yeah, this is interesting for sure. So, on the... let's just break this beer down and try and describe it for you a bit more in depth as we always do. We'll start on the middle third of the palate then. The backbone of the beer, you can feel that lovely kind of smooth, kind of hedgehog brown bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward, it gives you a little bit more kind of like woodiness and things there. And then you've got a layer of like Jacob's cream cracker for sure. That's the backbone of the beer. And the further you go into the aftertaste, the more that sort of lingers there. So, yeah, on top of that kind of crackery layer, you get the bready notes. So for me, you've got that nice, you've got this kind of quite dry wholemeal brown bready character that comes out of this one. So yeah, wholemeal brown bready character in there. On top of that, and it's quite a dry bread as well actually, I thought it was going to be a bit sweeter just going by the aroma, but on top of that you start to get the more kind of white bready character coming out of this one, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, you've got that white bready layer in there, and again it feels that the tea leaves are kind of infused in these lighter, you know, white bread and brown bready layers, but above the first white bready layer you start to get the wheaty notes out of the beer. So yeah, there's a little bit of a kind of wheaty note coming out of this one. So dense white bread wheaty character. Actually at the back of that front third of your palate you can feel there's a little touch of the wheaty bitiness, but it really smoothens out the further forward that you come. So remember that with your palate generally, sweeter flavours will come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours will come out further back. But on top of the wheaty layer you start to get a wee bit of the brown sugar coming out of this beer, so you've got a little bit of a kind of, you do have a little bit of a more kind of toasty, brown sugary character coming out of this one. So yeah, you've got nice kind of toasty, brown sugary notes in the base, then in the centre of your palate you've got that nice big oily kind of character as well. So yeah, the sweet caramel that comes out of this one's quite interesting. Like in the dead centre of your palate you do get that little bit of sweet caramel. It's got a wee bit of bite to it because of the the alcohol content. As I say, this is not the heaviest of wheat wines or barley wines or whatever. So yeah, you've got that little bit of bitey alcohol in the dead centre of your palate. And as you move further out from that, you get a wee bit more of an oily sweetness. Then you've also got that nice kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity kind of character sitting on top of all that kind of toastier brown sugar. So that's the middle third of the palate in this beer, which is probably where the majority of the complexity is in this one. But as you go into the aftertaste, like I say, you get more of the bread crust and you get more of the kind of tea characters coming out of this one. But yeah, on the border region then between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up in there, the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, and a wee bit of the wheaty bitiness. But the base of that back third of the palate, you've got the bread crust in there, which feels a little bit drier, of course. Then you've got the kind of crackery notes, brown bready character above that, which is really nice. So you get, yeah, that brown bready, that airy kind of brown bready character. Then you've got the white bready character above that, which again is lighter and more airy and feels a little bit dry. And then above all of that, you have more of a kind of wheaty, bitey sort of note coming out of the beer. So yeah, you can feel that little bit of wheaty bitiness there. And above everything else, you've got the yeasty side of things too. I think you get a little bit more tea out the back third of your palate too, but let's focus on those yeasty flavours for the moment. Yeah, so for me, the yeasty side of this beer, it has a little bit more, it's got like a little bit of a kind of dry brown bread in the middle, and as you move out from that, it gives you a little bit more of a sweeter brown bread, and then yeah, you've got bread crust around the very back edge of this one. So yeah, the way that everything sort of pieces together in this particular beer, I think, is very, very nice. But yeah, definitely back third of your palate, the flavour goes is taller, and as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way everything pieces together in the malty and yeasty side of this beer is quite nice, and that is of course the focus of this one as well. The one thing I would say about this beer too is that the hoppy side of things is a little bit more bitter than you might think it's going to be from the aroma. So yeah, in the back corners of the palate you do certainly have a little bit of earthiness. As you move further forward, you've got a little touch of herbal character, but it very quickly becomes a bit more kind of spicy and floral the further forward that you go. So yeah, you get a little bit more around the front curve of the tongue. You've got a wee bit more of a kind of lighter, wet grassiness coming out of this one. So yeah, wet grassiness, and there a nice little bit of floral aromaticity, and then yeah, a wee bit of herbal and an earthy character in there as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really quite nice too. So yeah, green component adds a little bit more complexity to the beer, and it's kind of in keeping with the kind of tea flavours and stuff that this one has. In terms of the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things, let's have a wee look at that. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get the kind of brown bread in the base, the white bread and a wee touch of the wheat on top. Then the base, yeah, a slightly sweeter bread crust in there, the Jacob's cream cracker, the brown bread, the white bread, the kind of more dead sweet, and then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's focus on that. But yeah, when you the fruity character that's coming out of this beer is pretty much as described from the aroma as well. When you take it in, it does have a wee bit of a like sharper note to it. But yeah, if you go to the back of that front third of your palate, it's like sultanas, you know, dry white green grapes. There's big oily pear in there. There's a little bit of apricot, and yeah, you know, you've got these other things going on with it as well, but mainly kind of dry and fruity as well, actually. So all in all, it's quite an interesting beer, this one, because it's quite different from other things that I've had. But I think some of the other ones that I remember, I've tried a few from Moonzen over the years, this one's not quite as pungent in its flavour in comparison to some other ones. But this is quite a different style of brewing. You have to remember that these Moonzen beers for me are almost a little bit more like kind of food pairing type beers. I would always kind of view them as that. They are beers that almost you would eat them with certain types of, you would drink them with certain types of food and things like that, rather than drinking them on your own as you might with some of the other beers that you'll get. But all in all, it's an interesting one, this, and I'm glad I got the chance to try it. So let's round off the review then with a wee quick look at the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer, it's kind of mid-bodied, top end to mid-bodied. The carbonation is pretty smooth in this one. The beer's a little bit oily and slick. It feels quite clean, to be honest with you as well. It tells you on the bottle that it's 40 IBUs. I'm a bit surprised at that. I would have guessed that it wasn't quite that. It feels quite mild in that sense as well, I would say. But the malt base has a bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a wee bit of kind of oily sweetness on top. The fruity side of the beer is quite light and more of a kind of drier and oily sort of fruity character as well. But yeah, all in all, it's quite an interesting beer, this one. And as I say, it's something to test your palate a little bit more, I would say, but quite different to the other wheat wines I've had before, probably because it's lower in ABV and probably because of the presence of the tea and things in there as well. So yeah, interesting stuff, I would definitely say that. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this particular review. So yeah, as always, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Moonzen Brewery as well, and we'll see about returning to these guys again at some point in the near future. But yeah, this one was the Ginseng Oolong Wheatwine, an 8.5% wheat wine with Taiwanese tea in it, the 10th anniversary beer of Moonzen Brewery in Kwun, Tong here in Hong Kong. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys again in another video very shortly. Ciao just now.